Alright, so now we're going to get into a few medical issues that we can see with diet in rabbits. So, briefly we're going to talk about teeth problems, obesity, bladder sludge. Certainly there's other things that we could talk about, but these are kind of the three main ones that I wanted to go over today, because they're the main ones that we have to deal with. So, teeth problems are really a very common issue that we see in rabbits, and our next lecture series that we're going to have in July, that one is actually going to be focused on teeth in rabbits, so we'll be talking a lot more about these sort of issues. But to go over it in relation to diet today, the silicates in the hay, remember those are in the hay and really important for keeping the nice shape and short height to the teeth in the rabbit mouth. If we have a rabbit that has not had enough hay in the diet, therefore it's not getting enough silicates, it's not really grinding those teeth down away as it should, it can result in overgrowth of the teeth. And so what these pictures show here, this is the upper incisors of a rabbit. This structure is just kind of holding the mouth open. This is the little tongue. This is the first cheek tooth, and then right behind it is a second cheek tooth, and you'll notice a little dental spur. So that little pokey thing is cutting actually into the tongue right there. And so that's going to be really painful for a rabbit. Normally when they're eating good amounts of hay, and they don't have other issues, that hay should be keeping that tooth nice and trim, because those rabbit teeth are constantly growing. But if they're not getting enough hay, then those teeth can slowly overgrow, eventually cut the tongue, and be quite painful for the rabbit. Another picture here, this is an actual scope that's put into the mouth of a rabbit, so it kind of gets that full arcade in the back portion of the mouth there. And it's nice because it actually shows you normal on this side, that's what it should look like, versus abnormal. You can see how long those little spikes are coming off the edge of the teeth there. And those have the potential to cut into the cheek tissue and be really painful for the rabbit. And then on this side too, you can see a couple spikes that can cut into the tongue. So, and you know, the signs can be quite variable for rabbits with teeth problems. I've certainly met several rabbits that haven't shown any signs, and I'll look in their mouth and they have horrible teeth and they have, you know, what looks like it'd be very painful, and they're acting like everything's fine. That's usually the exception rather than the rule. Most rabbits will start to show some sort of sign of oral discomfort. They may reduce different types of food that they're eating. They may be more selective and want to eat the softer things. So a lot of times rabbits will stop eating the hay first. And of course, if they're not really eating any hay, then you might not see that as an issue if you just have a rabbit that's eating pellets or greens. You can also have them start drooling a lot, you can have them lose weight, or you can have them completely go into gut stasis. So a variety of different things can happen when they have teeth issues. So when we have a tooth problem, what do we do about it? Well, the solution is we need to actually have their teeth trimmed down. When we have a mouth like this with all these spikes on it, just adding hay into the diet isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to be very important for them for future prevention, but what needs to be done first is we actually need to go into that mouth and take those spikes down, take the height down to those teeth, and shape them more appropriately and more normal for the rabbit to actually chew effectively and not have any oral pain. Here's just a picture right here. This actually was just a picture I found on the internet that shows a trimming of the mouth of a rabbit. We do it a little bit differently here at this particular facility, so I will have to get a little bit better pictures to show you guys for the next talk. Now, if we are wanting to prevent teeth problems, well, of course, increasing the hay in the diet, particularly for those rabbits who have not been on any hay, is going to be very important so that we hopefully don't have problems like this reoccur down the road. Getting older hays, and again, the reason we're getting older hays is because, as I had mentioned before, when you're looking at hay, the nutrient profile changes based upon the age, the storage, the different type of hay. So an older hay actually has more complex carbohydrates in it, which is going to be a little bit better for helping to keep those teeth nice and trim. You can also get the rabbit to chew on sticks, branches. People often ask about the little blocks, and the blocks are fine, the little like blocks of wood are fine, but those are focusing more on the incisors. When we're wanting to focus on the molars in the back of the mouth, and we're trying to get rabbits to chew on different things, I usually recommend sticks because they then kind of get those things and really chew them and take them into the back of their mouth and focus more on the molars when they're chewing those things. And so citrus trees are usually very safe. Applewood is safe. Willow is safe as well. Of course, when you are getting sticks or branches from trees, you want to make sure that it is a tree that has not been treated with any sort of pesticides, of course. Okay, next problem is obesity. And so, though this rabbit looks extremely cute, it's not very healthy for him to be overweight. So, definitely we all know too many calories, not enough exercise can really result in obesity problems. And a lot of times it's because we tend to feed them a little too many pellets or too many treats, or maybe they are eating the pellets that have extra stuff kind of mixed in there. So the reason we worry about obesity is because there's lots of problems it could have. And so it can result in rabbits having difficulty cleaning themselves. That's definitely something we see quite frequently. It also can lead to arthritis because extra pressure is being placed on those joints, and so they may have a little bit more difficulty getting around. Liver problems we do see because, again, if we have a rabbit that goes through an episode of not eating very well, the body starts to mobilize a lot of fat, and it can move a lot of that fat into the liver, making it so the liver doesn't function as well. And then heart problems are also a potential problem that we could see, because you can have that atherosclerosis issue where you get the hardening of the vessels. So solutions to deal with this problem: reduce the amount of pellets that are given. We want to focus more on that 1/8 of a cup per rabbit per day, just a small handful. Ensure that the rabbit is getting a lot of grass hay as opposed to the legume hay. You want to either eliminate the treats or change the kind of treats that you're giving them. Change them to some sort of healthy alternative treat. And so one thing that I often will recommend to people, because people love to give their rabbits treats, we all love to because they get so excited about it, but if we have a rabbit who's really accustomed to getting treats, sometimes using the greens as a treat, offering a different type of green that they haven't had before, or one that they really like, and using that small pieces of it more as a treat as opposed to things like banana or apple that are a little bit higher in those simple carbohydrates that could be leading to obesity problems. And then of course exercise, and this little guy is trying real hard. Okay, and so then the last problem that I wanted to talk about in rabbits with nutritional issues is bladder sludge. And so bladder sludge is kind of a controversial thing. There's many different things that potentially can cause this syndrome that we see in rabbits. So it's something that I can't say to you, oh, you have a rabbit that has bladder sludge, it's definitely because you're giving too much calcium and we need to change the diet. There certainly are cases where that is the case, and so whenever we have a rabbit that comes into the hospital that has a bladder sludge issue, we have to talk about a lot of different potential things that could cause this problem. And so bladder sludge, to start off with, this is an x-ray down at the bottom here, and you'll notice this really bright white structure back in the abdomen. That is the urinary bladder of the rabbit, and the reason it's so nice bright white is because there is a lot of high calcium sludge just sitting in that bladder. And what sludge actually looks like is like sand. And so a rabbit who has really sludgy urine has a lot of little calcium minerals that are in it, and it can get to be to the point where when they urinate, it's so thick that it comes out, it dries on a towel, and it literally looks like sand was in a bladder. Normally, on an x-ray, I should never see a bladder that looks that white. A bladder should really kind of be the same shade of gray as over here. This is where some intestines lie, and really it should look very similar. So this is a rabbit that really has some pretty severe bladder sludge. Now, there's lots of different causes for it. We do know that high calcium diets can result in bladder sludge, again, because rabbits are very efficient at absorbing calcium from their diet, and then they excrete it through their kidneys and into their bladder. But urinary tract infections can cause it. The organism E. caniculi also potentially could result in this problem. We will talk more about E. caniculi later down the road at one of our other seminars in the future. But it is a particular infectious disease that we know has the potential to cause something like this. Nerve problems can result in bladder sludge, obesity, genetics, and there's times when we really don't know what caused it. A rabbit can be on a perfect diet, it's a perfect weight, there's no evidence of an infection, no nerve problems, and then they have bladder sludge. So then those are the cases that we say, oh, maybe it's a genetic issue. But there's lots of different things that can cause it. It's not a really straightforward issue. So, but because we're at the diet talk today, and we do know that a diet can cause it, what we will mention about bladder sludge in particular here today is that because too much calcium in the diet can cause it, we want to reduce things like alfalfa hay, alfalfa pellets if a rabbit is getting those things, and then greens that are really high in calcium. So our kale, mustard green, parsley, all that list that I gave you guys before. And so then refer back to the other list of all the initial safe greens that I listed on there as ones that you can kind of pick from and change up throughout the week. So you want those safe greens to be more your kind of base that you're using more frequently, and then your kale, parsley, what have you, kind of, more here and there, a couple times a week at most. If you ever had a rabbit that did have bladder sludge, because there's been plenty of rabbits that eat lots of kale and never have bladder sludge and they're fine. But if you ever did have a rabbit that did have bladder sludge, that would be something that we would have to say, okay, let's really back off of that. Maybe your rabbit in particular, it's too much, kind of like if you think about people with allergies. For example, I am horribly allergic to peanuts, and so maybe you can eat peanuts just fine and they're great for you, but they'll kill me, so we wouldn't want me eating peanuts, just like we wouldn't want a rabbit who's maybe prone to sludge eating higher calcium greens. So but since we know we can prevent sludge from happening potentially from not giving too much high calcium greens, I would say I usually tell people best to only give those higher calcium greens a couple times a week, once a week, that sort of thing. So, okay. So just to finish up with the bladder sludge, so the solution for dealing with bladder sludge, of course, is treating the underlying cause. If we have a urinary tract infection, of course, then we need to be really focusing on that. But if we know our underlying issue is because of diet, then of course we are going to do things like trying to adjust it. A lot of times when a rabbit is coming into the hospital and has bladder sludge, sometimes we have a real definite, okay, we know exactly what caused it, but a good portion of the time it's a little difficult to say exactly what it was. So we will do things like bladder flushing, and what that is actually putting a catheter into the bladder and kind of helping to get sludge and urine out of the bladder, kind of clean all that high calcium sludge out of there. Getting them fluids is very important for bladder sludge, because giving them fluids is going to then make them urinate more, and in urinating more and filling that bladder up with hopefully clean urine that doesn't have any, or not large amounts of calcium in it, you can really allow for them to push more of that calcium out on their own. We're oftentimes putting them on antibiotics as well, because a lot of times there is a urinary tract infection associated. Certainly urinary tract infections are known to cause bladder sludge, but we also know that with all that sludge sitting in the bladder and not moving, they're more prone to developing urinary tract infections too, because it makes a nice little environment for little bugs to kind of hang out in. And then sometimes we also have them on medications that help a rabbit urinate, but it really depends on the individual rabbit whether or not we need to put them on those particular medications. Medications to help a rabbit urinate tend to be more for rabbits that have neurological problems that have caused the bladder sludge, or rabbits who are repeat offenders with bladder sludge. And again, in prevention, which we've already mentioned, is avoid feeding those high calcium foods. Encourage them to drink a little bit more. You can put water on the greens. You can moisten the pellets to get them to drink more. And then encouraging them to exercise too, because we do know that obesity can result in bladder sludge. But then also getting them to move a little bit. Maybe they'll be urinating a little bit more on different things for us to get stuff moving.